This Sunday, I was on a morning run, just finishing up back at my house, when the dog from a neighbor's house just up the road started chasing through the middle of the road. I live on a fairly busy street where the speed limit is 45 miles per hour. It might sound unsafe to run on this road, especially given it doesn't have a sidewalk, and the shoulder is only about 2 feet wide, but there's a side street with sidewalks and a lower speed limit only about 800 feet down the road, so I usually just stay vigilant to the road at the beginning and end of each run. The dog's owner's house sat in this stretch of road. Anyway, the dog chased me just about right up to my driveway, where it got hit and run over by a van and ultimately ended the life of. A series of unfortunate events only became worse for me when the dog's owner and his 3 small children came out hysterical that they had obviously lost their pet. Not to mention there were 3 more young children accompanying their parent in the van, obviously distraught by what they just witnessed as well. The whole neighborhood came out to see what had happened, where they come to find the dog's owner cussing me out for causing this disaster to happen. I tried to calmly state that I didn't intend for the dog to chase me and that I've been running on this stretch of road each week, but consoling the heartbroken family and onlookers was just about impossible at this point. After I realized there wasn't really anything I could do to improve the situation, I told the owner that I lived here and would be happy to do anything I could to help the situation. I went home, and after a few moments, the situation appeared to have ended. In hindsight, it may not have been the best idea to tell them where I lived, but I didn't think anything bad would come of me because of the situation. I was on the opposite side of the road facing oncoming traffic from the house, and I maintained my rate of speed and direction as I went by. I figure the dog should have been put on a leash if it had a history of sprinting off. As it turns out, the owner of the dog is also the head of the highway department in my town and has a lot of pull in the community. He's since gone on an angry tirade on the community Facebook page, accusing me of causing the incident. I still in no way think this is my fault, but I have no idea how I'll convince the town I'm not at fault in the situation, given the neighbors' influence in my small community. Moving is not really an option at this point, as I live in the same town my elderly parents are, where I spend a few days each week taking care of them. I'm just worried about going to the store and ending up in a confrontation without people being able to hear my side through. Please let me know if there was any way I could have handled this situation better. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. NTA. You go on that community Facebook page and you reply, "I am so very sorry for what happened to your family pet, but I am not sure what I was supposed to do in this situation," where a strange dog, not on a leash, not in a fenced yard, was not under control of its owner, started running, chasing after me, while I was on my daily run on the opposite side of the road. Please explain to me how I caused this event and what you think I should have done. This puts this tragedy back on him to explain himself, not only to you, but the others in the community. Comment 2. Not the idiot. The dog's owner is wholly at fault for not keeping him safe. Unless you were actively baiting him with chicken and luring him into the street, which of course you weren't. Nope, still wouldn't be at fault. People who have difficulty accepting the consequences of their actions, or in this case, inactions, will often pin the blame on anyone else they can, so they don't have to make any changes to their own behavior or go through the discomfort of knowing they were wrong. Now for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So it's been 3 months since that awful morning, and things have been pretty rough. Right after the incident, I tried to lay low, hoping the whole thing would blow over. But it didn't. The neighbor, who I'll just call Mr. Highway, kept up his campaign against me. He even went as far as putting up flyers around town, warning people about the reckless runner who caused his family's tragedy. One day I was at the grocery store just trying to pick up some essentials when I overheard a couple of people whispering about me. They didn't know I was right there, and I heard one of them say, "That's the guy who got the dog ended the life of." It was like a punch to the gut. I quickly finished my shopping and got out of there. But it was clear that Mr. Highway's influence was strong. A few weeks later, I was out for another run, this time taking a different route to avoid any more confrontations. As I was running, I noticed a car following me slowly. It was unnerving, but I tried to ignore it. Eventually, the car pulled up beside me, and the driver rolled down the window. It was one of Mr. Highway's friends. He started yelling at me, calling me all sorts of names and blaming me for the dog's death. I tried to explain that it wasn't my fault, but he wasn't having any of it. He drove off, leaving me shaken and upset. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the incident in my head, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. I knew the dog should have been on a leash, but I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. I decided to talk to my parents about it the next day. They were supportive, as always, but they didn't have any solutions for me. They just told me to keep my head down and try to avoid any more trouble. A month later, things took a turn for the worse. I came home from work one day to find my house had been vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "Dog Unalived" on my garage door and smashed a few windows. I was furious and called the police, but they didn't seem too interested in helping. They took a report, but I could tell they didn't think it was a big deal. I felt completely helpless. Around this time, I started noticing that my parents' health was declining. My dad had been having trouble with his memory, and my mom was getting weaker. I was spending more and more time at their house, trying to take care of them and keep up with my own life. It was exhausting, but I didn't have a choice. I couldn't leave them to fend for themselves. One evening, while I was at my parents' house, my mom pulled me aside. She told me that she had heard some rumors about Mr. Highway's family. Apparently, his wife had left him a few years ago, and he had been struggling to take care of the kids on his own. She said that he had a lot of anger issues and had been known to take it out on others. It made sense given how he had been treating me, but it didn't make me feel any better. A few days later, I got a call from one of my neighbors. She told me that there was going to be a town meeting to discuss the incident and that I should be there to defend myself. I was nervous, but I knew I had to go. When I arrived at the meeting, the tension in the room was clear. Mr. Highway was there along with a bunch of his supporters. I could see the anger in their eyes. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. I explained what had happened that morning, how I had been running on the opposite side of the road and that the dog had chased me. I told them that I felt terrible about what had happened, but that it wasn't my fault. I could see some people nodding in agreement, but others were still glaring at me. After I finished speaking, Mr. Highway stood up and started yelling at me. He accused me of lying and said that I had no right to be running on that road. He even brought up my parents, saying that they were a burden on the community and that I should just leave town. That was the last straw for me. I couldn't believe he would stoop so low. I left the meeting feeling defeated, but I knew I couldn't give up. I decided to reach out to a lawyer to see if there was anything I could do to clear my name. The lawyer was sympathetic and agreed to help me. We started gathering evidence, including witness statements and photos of the scene. It was a slow process, but I felt like I was finally doing something to fight back. In the meantime, I continued to take care of my parents. My dad's memory was getting worse, and my mom was having trouble walking. It was heartbreaking to see them like that, but I knew I had to be strong for them. One day, while I was helping my mom with her medication, she told me something that changed everything. She said that she had seen Mr. Highway's dog running loose before and that it had chased other people in the neighborhood. She had never mentioned it before because she didn't want to cause any trouble, but she knew it was important now. Armed with this new information, I went back to my lawyer. We tracked down a few other neighbors who had similar experiences with the dog. They agreed to provide statements, and we added them to our case. It was starting to look like we had a real chance of clearing my name. As the weeks went by, I started to notice a change in the way people treated me. Some of the neighbors who had been cold and distant were now more friendly and supportive. It seemed like word was getting out that I wasn't the monster Mr. Highway had made me out to be. It was a small victory, but it gave me hope. Finally, after months of stress and uncertainty, we had our day in court. The judge listened to both sides and reviewed all the evidence. In the end, he ruled in my favor, stating that the dog's owner was responsible for keeping it on a leash and that I was not at fault for the incident. It was a huge relief, and I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But before I tell you about what happened next, I need to explain something about Mr. Highway. It turns out that his anger and bitterness stemmed from a lot of personal issues. He had lost his job at the highway department due to budget cuts, and his wife had left him shortly after. He was struggling to raise his kids on his own and was dealing with a lot of unresolved anger. Knowing this didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand why he had been so relentless in his campaign against me. In the end, I decided to stay in town and continue taking care of my parents. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I felt like I had finally cleared my name and could start to rebuild my life. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for leaving my partner's brother's wedding reception early after being treated like an unwanted guest? I'm Y, 25-year-old female, and my partner Alex, 24-year-old male, went to his brother Luke's 30-year-old male wedding this past weekend, and I left early, which has caused a lot of drama with his family. I have been dating Alex for 3 years, and we've been living together for 2. I think I'm pretty close with his family. I go to every holiday. We visit his parents very often. His mom often takes me out for lunch, and we run errands together. I talk to Luke and their sister both almost every day. We house dog sit for Luke and Tanya, 30-year-old female, Luke's now wife, often, etc. I talk to Tanya all the time. We go out for coffee dates, etc. We were pretty close, I think. Anyway, the wedding. I'm Alex's +1. He's a groomsman. I am not invited to the ceremony, but that's all right. I figure there's limited space. I arrive at the reception, and the plan was that I was sitting with Alex, Luke, and Tanya's parents, since I know them both well. Change of plans last minute. I'm actually moved to a table in the corner with the DJ and whichever cooks and servers were taking their break at that time. I will admit I was hurt and feeling anxious. Since the reception was huge and I wasn't around anyone I knew, I am pretty socially anxious in crowds and with strangers. But I sucked it up and made small talk and was pleasant in general, because it's not my day. After dinner, the parents' table was only about 3/4 full because some couldn't make it, so they invite me over. I go to sit with them, but Tanya pulled me aside and said I can't sit at the family table because photographers will be taking photos. Alex tries to come dance with me, but Tanya tells him that he should stay at the wedding party table so that it isn't empty for photos. Luke, the groom, eventually asks if I want to dance with him, since I've been sitting alone and he considers me his bonus little sister, and he wants a dance with all of his family members at his wedding. But Tanya rushed in after about 30 seconds of dancing and pulled him away for something important. I was getting the hint at this point. It was pretty clear I wasn't very welcome here, but I still don't know why. I caught Alex quickly to say I wasn't feeling well and I'd see him at home. I made my goodbyes, congratulated Luke and Tanya for their wedding, and ducked out. Well, Alex is pissed at Tanya because I told him everything after a cooling down period. Tanya is pissed at me for leaving early. Parents seem to be mad at me for refusing to socialize. I haven't told them anything. Luke apologized to me, but is otherwise staying out of it. The whole family is kind of in a fight now. I feel like it's my fault because I left early, but I don't even know how anyone noticed with how many people were there. I honestly figured I wouldn't be missed. I was just honestly really uncomfortable and really didn't want to be there anymore. But I guess it was a wedding and maybe I should have just sucked it up. Am I the jerk? To add, I dressed up for the wedding. I had my dress approved by the bride beforehand, but I wore makeup and did my hair and generally looked much nicer than usual. The bride is very upset that family, which included her now husband, commented that I looked nice, and that seems to be the root of the problem. More info in comments. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, my husband was the best man in a wedding. He sat up at a head table that was stretched across the front, not a round table, but one where the entire bridal party was in a row. Only the bridal party sat there, no spouses, so I was seated at a table with other people I'd never met. I did my best to chat, but was somewhat uncomfortable. Although I was allowed to dance with my husband after dinner, fiancé at the time, we weren't told we had to sit there all night. It's ridiculous that you are the groom's brother's girlfriend and were put at a table with the help. That just sounds mean. Tanya clearly does not consider you family and made sure you were uncomfortable. Tell people your side of the story without any emotion. They'll realize how mean she is, but you're not the idiot. Comment 2. Oh boy, big update if anyone is interested, like many of you suggested. I sent the family the text I received from Tanya. Parents apologized profusely, but that's not even the half of it. I guess Tanya denied sending me anything and said I made it up because I never liked her. Luke went through her phone and ended up finding a lot more. Apparently Tanya has been cheating for a while. Luke found messages and he's going to come over shortly to stay on my and Alex's couch for a bit. That's all I'll say. This has officially gone way further than I thought it would. Thanks to everyone that gave me support and advice. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So things have gotten even more complicated since the wedding. The day after the wedding, Alex and I had a long talk. He was still upset with Tanya, but he was also worried about how this whole situation was affecting our relationship. We decided to visit his parents to try and clear the air. When we got there, it was clear that they were still upset with me. I tried to explain my side of the story, but they seemed more interested in defending Tanya. They said that weddings are stressful and that I should have been more understanding. I left feeling even worse than before. The next day, Alex went to talk to Luke. He wanted to get to the bottom of why Tanya was so upset with me. Luke admitted that Tanya had been feeling insecure ever since she overheard some family members saying that I looked nicer than her at the wedding. This was news to me, and it made me feel terrible. I never intended to outshine the bride on her big day. Luke said he tried to calm Tanya down, but she was convinced that I had done it on purpose. Later that evening, Tanya called me. She was still angry and accused me of trying to steal the spotlight. I tried to apologize and explain that I had no idea anyone would say such things, but she wasn't having it. She said some pretty hurtful things, and by the end of the call, I was in tears. Alex tried to comfort me, but I could tell he was torn between supporting me and not wanting to upset his family further. The following day, I decided to take a break from all the drama and went to visit my own family. I needed some space to think. While I was there, I got a call from Alex. He sounded stressed and said that things had escalated. Apparently, Tanya had told the rest of the family that I had been rude to her on the phone and that I had no respect for her or the family. This was a complete lie, but it seemed like everyone believed her. Alex's parents called him and said that they were disappointed in me and that they didn't want me around for a while. Feeling completely isolated, I decided to stay with my family for a few more days. During this time, I started to reflect on my relationship with Alex and his family. I realized that this wasn't the first time Tanya had made me feel unwelcome. There had been other instances where she had made snide comments about my appearance or my relationship with Alex. I had always brushed them off, thinking she was just having a bad day or was stressed about the wedding. But now it seemed like there was a pattern. I also thought about my relationship with Alex. He had always been supportive, but I could tell that this situation was putting a strain on us. He was caught in the middle, and I didn't want to make things harder for him, but at the same time, I couldn't keep putting myself in situations where I felt unwelcome and disrespected. When I finally returned home, Alex and I had another long talk. He admitted that he was struggling to balance his loyalty to his family with his love for me. He said he wanted to support me, but he also didn't want to alienate his family. I told him that I understood, but that I couldn't keep putting myself in situations where I felt unwelcome and disrespected. We decided to take a break from visiting his family for a while and focus on our relationship. A few days later, I got a message from Luke. He apologized again for how things had turned out and said that he was trying to talk to Tanya about her behavior. He said that he didn't want the situation to ruin our relationship, but he also didn't want to take sides. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't change the fact that I felt unwelcome in their family. As the days went by, I started to feel more and more isolated. I missed the close relationship I had with Alex's family, but I also knew that I couldn't keep putting myself in situations where I felt unwelcome and disrespected. I started to focus more on my own friends and family, but it was hard not to feel like I had lost something important. In the end, Alex and I decided to take a break from each other. It was a difficult decision, but we both felt that we needed some space to figure things out. I moved back in with my family for a while and started to focus on my own life. It was hard, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Looking back, I realized that this situation had brought up a lot of unresolved issues. Tanya's behavior had been a wake-up call, and it made me realize that I needed to stand up for myself more. I also realized that I needed to be more honest with Alex about how I was feeling. It was a tough lesson to learn, but I knew it would make me stronger in the long run. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for going to my son's game? After my ex-wife threatened not to bring him. 34-year-old male have been divorced from my ex, 31-year-old female, since December. We got divorced after I spent a summer trying to fix our marriage when I discovered her affair. After saying she'd never be faithful to me again, we separated and we're finally over. We share our 4-year-old son, who is just my whole world. I only live in this town because we moved here for her to go to school, where she met the affair partner and left me. So I'm really only here for my son. He is currently playing t-ball and had his second game the other week, where the issue started. I'll spare some of the other drama for another post if needed, but after that game, my ex and I got into a few verbal arguments about how I treated her affair partner and mother, and that I was apparently rude and unwelcoming to them. I still don't know what I should have done in that situation. Was I supposed to be jolly and act like their affair and lies didn't matter? Like I was supposed to treat them as family? No thanks. I don't plan to be rude, but I don't see any need to be friendly either. I'm just neutral, as I'm tired of giving her or them any of my emotions. Now to the issue, my son and his team were invited to the local AAA ball club for their season opener to meet the team and watch the game on a Wednesday. So I told my ex I would meet them there as this was a fun event that I wanted to be present for with my son. She said that I was not invited and should not go as it is her day to have my son, and because I created an uneasy feeling for her being around my ex, I shouldn't go. I took this very personally as there was no way I was going to be denied time with my son for her issues. She said, "Well, if you're there, just know it's my right if we do not come at all," to which I responded, "I will be fine and can handle being around you all, so if you don't come, that's on your conscience." Well, I went to the game and she did not. She did not bring our son, so there I was as the only parent without their kid present for the game. I still joined the team as I'm an honorary coach and wanted to support them all, but I left soon after as I just didn't know what to do. I feel as if she has chosen her comfort over what was best for our son. I'm not even mad, just disappointed and realizing how selfish she is. But Reddit, am I the jerk? I know I have every right to be at my son's events, and I'm not going to sacrifice that time with him, but this was just hard to bear, so I'm seeking advice. I felt like my son was robbed of a wonderful moment, and that this will be a theme for our post-divorce life, and I don't want that for my kid. We have not spoken on the issue since it happened, and I'll be seeing her for the first time today to get my son back. She says we need to respect each other and act like stable parents, but then she goes and pulls this on me, which I feel is way more disrespectful. But could I be wrong? Thanks for your comments in advance. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, OP, not the jerk, and I would document this and bring it up in court. Regardless if it's her day, your child has the right to not be isolated. By keeping him from the game, she isolated you. If you helped his team, you were bound to be expected to be there, period. Our court orders literally spell out that we must do what's in the best interest of our daughters, and if they're in sports extracurriculars, we have to suck it up. Comment 2, document, document, document. Stop having verbal conversations. Everything should be written unless it is an emergency. Have proof that she is the one not prioritizing your son. It is possible to go to an event and not interact and be cordial. It seems like she is regretting her decisions after seeing how you're still an active father, or her AP isn't all he is cracked up to be. Not the jerk. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post. So after the whole AAA ball club fiasco, things have been pretty tense. I picked up my son from my ex's place the next day, and she barely said a word to me. I could tell she was still fuming about the game, but I didn't want to get into another argument in front of our son. I just took him home and tried to focus on having a good time with him. A few days later, I got a call from my son's t-ball coach. He told me that my ex had called him to complain about me being at the game and how it made her uncomfortable. The coach was pretty understanding and said he didn't want to get involved in our personal issues, but he suggested that maybe we should try to work things out for the sake of our son. I agreed, but I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Later that week, I got a call from my ex's mother. She wanted to meet up and talk about everything that had been going on. I was hesitant at first, but I figured it couldn't hurt to hear her out. We met at a local coffee shop, and she started off by apologizing for how things had gone down at the game. She said she understood why I was upset, but she also wanted me to understand that my ex was struggling too. She then dropped the news on me. She told me that my ex had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety shortly after our divorce. She said that my ex had been seeing a therapist and was on medication, but she was still having a hard time coping with everything. This was a lot to take in, and it made me see things in a different light. I realized that maybe my ex's actions weren't just about being selfish, but were also influenced by her mental health struggles. This new information put me in a tough spot. On one hand, I wanted to be there for my son and make sure he didn't miss out on important events. On the other hand, I didn't want to make things harder for my ex, especially if she was dealing with mental health issues. I decided to talk to her about it and see if we could come to some sort of compromise. When I brought it up to her, she was initially defensive. She didn't want to admit that she was struggling, but eventually she broke down and told me everything. She said she felt like a failure as a mother and that she was scared of losing our son. She admitted that she had been trying to push me away because she didn't know how to handle her feelings. It was a really emotional conversation, and it made me realize that we both needed to work on our communication. We decided to try co-parenting counseling to help us navigate our new relationship as co-parents. The first few sessions were tough, but they helped us understand each other better. We learned how to communicate without getting into arguments and how to put our son's needs first. It wasn't easy, but it was a step in the right direction. In the meantime, my son had another t-ball game. This time, my ex and I agreed to both be there, but to keep our distance from each other. It was awkward at first, but it went surprisingly well. We both cheered for our son and made sure he knew we were there for him. It felt like a small victory, and it gave me hope that we could make this work. However, things took another turn when I found out that my ex had been talking to her affair partner again. I was furious and felt betrayed all over again. I confronted her about it, and she admitted that she had been seeing him behind my back. She said she was confused and didn't know what she wanted, but it felt like a slap in the face after everything we had been through. This revelation forced me to make a hard choice. I had to decide whether to continue trying to work things out with her for the sake of our son, or to cut ties and focus on being the best father I could be on my own. It was a difficult decision, but I knew I couldn't keep putting myself through this emotional roller coaster. I decided to focus on my son and my own well-being. I told my ex that I would always be there for our son, but that I couldn't keep getting dragged into her drama. I needed to set boundaries and protect myself from getting hurt again. It was a tough conversation, but it felt like the right thing to do. As for my son, he's been doing great. He's really enjoying t-ball, and it's been a great way for us to bond. I've been trying to be more present and involved in his life, and it's been really rewarding. I know there will be more challenges ahead, but I'm determined to be the best father I can be. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.